Okay, we are about to dive deep into the mind of a true historical giant. We're going to explore a pretty fascinating and, yeah, maybe a little controversial theory about how he saw the world. Or, maybe more accurately, how he didn't. Let's get into the abstract architect.
I mean, we all know these words, right? They're iconic. They echo through history. They're basically the bedrock of an entire nation's philosophy. They speak of these huge, timeless ideals: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
But wait a second. Just take a moment and read them again. Yeah, they're soaring, they're inspiring, for sure. But what's actually missing from the picture they're painting?
It's the people, the concrete reality of life. The sights, the sounds, the smells, all those vivid, messy details of actual human beings living and breathing. The language is, well, it's grand, but it's also really abstract. And that right there, that's our jumping off point.
See, this abstraction, it might not just be a stylistic choice. It could actually be a clue, hiding in plain sight, right there in the words of one of history's most important documents. So here's the big question, the central idea we're exploring today. What if the reason for this super abstract style wasn't just philosophical, but like neurological? What if Thomas Jefferson, the guy who wrote these words, had what we now call a blind mind's eye?
Okay, so to really unpack this theory, we need to get a handle on two key concepts first. You can think of them as our detective tools for cracking this case.
All right, first up is the blind mind's eye, which you might also know as aphantasia. So here's what that means. It's when someone just can't voluntarily conjure up a mental image. So if I say, hey, think of an apple, most of us, we see some kind of apple in our head, right? But someone with a blind mind's eye, they don't. They know exactly what an apple is, they understand the concept, but they don't actually see a picture of it in their mind.
And our second tool, this one has a great name. It's the zombie noun. And it's a fantastic term, really, for an abstract noun that takes an action, a living, breathing verb, and just freezes it solid. So the active verb to decide suddenly becomes the static, lifeless thing called a decision. It basically zaps the action right out of the sentence.
And you can really feel the difference. When we say the general decided to invade, you can almost picture it, right? There's a person, there's an action. But when you say the general's invasion decision was made, poof, the action just vanishes. It becomes this static, abstract event. The zombie noun has completely taken over.
All right, so now that we have our tools, the blind mind's eye and zombie nouns, let's actually put them to work. We're going to be textual detectives and look for the symptoms of this abstract thinking style right in Jefferson's own writing.
And once you start applying this lens to his writing, a really clear pattern starts to pop out. You see this preference for what the source material calls ideal bounds. So think legal or philosophical lines, not, actual physical fences. You see a huge focus on these abstract things like liberty with a capital L, and a real avoidance of concrete sensory details about people or places. And yeah, you guessed it, a heavy, heavy reliance on those zombie nouns.
So this pattern of thinking, it really points to a fascinating and honestly, a deeply important conflict. It suggests a mind that might have been operating in two totally separate, almost competing worlds. The world of abstract ideals and the world of, well, concrete reality.
And this is where that conflict just becomes crystal clear. On one hand, you have this ideal world, a clean, logical, almost sterile place of abstract truths and universal rights. And on the other hand, you have the nightmares of oppression, the messy, brutal, sensory reality of human suffering, like the lives of the enslaved people on his very own plantation.
So this theory brings us to a really provocative question. Is it possible that a mind that can't easily conjure up vivid mental pictures, a mind that naturally prefers these big abstract ideals, might find it, cognitively easier to champion liberty in the abstract, while at the same time failing to fully process the concrete sensory horror of something like slavery?
Okay, so where does all of this leave us? Well, this whole idea isn't just about one guy from history. It really offers a completely new lens for how we think about leadership itself.
And let's be super clear about something here. This is not a diagnosis. It's impossible and frankly irresponsible to try and diagnose someone from the past. This is not a medical claim. What it is a powerful analytical tool. It's a new way to ask questions about history.
So the big takeaway, the so what of all of this, is that a leader's internal cognitive world, how they literally think and process information, could have a profound effect on their political philosophy, their writing, their actions, and ultimately the world that we all live in. And that really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. It kind of pushes us to think not just about what our leaders say, but how they think. How do the private, unseen architectures inside their minds end up building the very public, very real structures of our world? That's a question that's definitely worth thinking about.